So we're at the end of the Megalong Valley at the moment, sort of towards the Wild Dog Mountains, out near the Cox's River tributaries, and this is a little stone lifting mecca down here, if you like, that recently discovered.
So we're, for the first time, we're not incidentally lifting stones, we're actually on a stone hunt.
Yeah, so this isn't this isn't a we'll see if there's stones here. We know there's fucking stones here, and there's actually, depending on, because we've had huge rainfall, this area will flood. So this my particular lifting stone, if you like, that I've sort of left situated here, may be underwater. If that's the case, we'll just find another one. But I'm looking at the water level we're driving next to right now, and I think we might be okay. A lot of the places we've been are actually the tops of the mountains on the ridge lines. We're about as deep down in the valley as you can go in this area. So we're right down at the bottom. We're at like equivalent of like mountain sea level, if you like, because this is a valley that the river itself has carved through. So the stones you get here are different because you're in the different levels of sedimentary rock now. Right down near the granites and the hard base rocks, you know what I mean? So see what we can see.
I feel like this is going to come out.
Oh, well done.
The one-leg jump.
Ooh. So this particular stone here is the one I've lifted a few times. This is one that I sort of found down here, and it's sort of become my lifting stone, if you like, the one that I return to. It's this sort of stone here. This is quite similar to a lot of your Scottish stones, because a lot of those are stones that are originally from rivers or down in valleys and things like that.
Oh yeah,
it's exactly like.
Sorry, I need to apologise for putting the wrong photo on the last video. Where I put the
Dinny. He put the Dinny stones on when we were talking about historic Scottish stones, and that's fine. They are a historic Scottish stone after a fashion, but it's not the same as what we were sort of talking about when we compare it to these types of stones. So it's all good.
Which is why I'm here to learn.
Absolutely, it's an honest mistake to make, especially with the amount of shit flying around on social media these days. So no, it's all good. But yeah, this stone here, I sort of, when I was here, I had to muck around with a few, and this was the one that was actually really a good challenge. It sits on the riverbank. When it floods, which it has probably in the last day, it gets buried underwater, but it comes back out. And now it's very muddy.
So we can even leave that here to dry for a little bit while we play with some of the other ones.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so we've got, I mean, this is the beauty of some of those ridge tops we've been to, as you know. They're hard to find stones sometimes because stones are often, they're broken down to dust or they're just non-existent up in those areas. When you can get into a riverbed and it's all granite and all that types of stone, look at this place, it's like a stone mecca. Just fucking any type of stone you want, your press stones, shoulder stones, carium, fucking, it's amazing, it's lovely. Alright, Andy's unearthed this stone, the base of this beautiful tree right on the shore of the stream, and he's going to be the first to go.
She isn't light.
Yeah, you'll find that none of these are.
It's almost like getting your fingers underneath is part of the challenge.
Yeah. There you go. Cool. Oh, go for the press.
Oh shit. It just, the dizziness passed, and then I was like, I can do this, and then I dipped, and it just came back again. That's it.
Holy shit.
No, the Andy stone.
That's why you control your descent.
Also your phone and shit is just there.
I know. See, it slipped when it was overhead.
Yeah.
It's like okay. That was quite nice.
It's a nice stone to lift.
Takes some getting into position because I'm like super mobile and flexible. Took me a second to be able to get my hand under, but
yeah, it looks like it was quite comfortable to the lap, and then it just wasn't in the exact position you wanted it to go up.
yeah,
To spin in
it's. I can press just about anything, but it's with stones I often struggle with the flexibility in my shoulders and elbows to get under it. So that can be. They often see me spend a bit of time in the rack position with the press. But no, it was good.
If you guys just watched Luke's attempt before, you notice that he shuffled it a whole bunch to get into position. So what he mentioned to me is that this is the side that I kind of want on my chest if I'm going to press it. So I'm going to position it in a way where I can get it there, and then the rest is just up to my strength level. Oh, damn it. Just a little bit in front.
Wasn't bad, man.
Yeah.
Because there's that slight angle on that stone, so when it rolled over, all the load was back into you, which
Yeah.
is perfect. You don't want it pulling away from you. So what Andy and I were discussing before, and it's sort of like what we've discussed a lot with natural stones, is the whole puzzle, unlocking the puzzle with natural stones. So on the ridge line earlier today, we looked at a stone that one side was thin, the other side was fat, and had a bulge out here, and it sort of was like a dish in the middle. So the weight on something like that is going to distribute quite unevenly. Something like this is quite centered, but there are other considerations to worry about. So this angle here, it's actually thinner along the top here. So when you flip it over, you can see that actually does bulge out quite a way. Now, what Andy was referring to before was he wanted this flat surface, either one. There's two flat surfaces here, that one or that one, in the rack position on your chest, so that when you go into press, your hand's under a nice edge. I mean, we're quite fortunate with this stone in that it does have nice edges that you can get your hands under. I was saying to Andy before, I actually prefer sometimes a rounder stone because of the lack of flexibility in my shoulders. Getting under a rounder stone that has a bulge here will elevate the sides off my chest a little more, so I can get my hands under easier. If you looked at my lift, I spend quite a bit of time getting under. That's just a flexibility issue, it's not a strength problem. But with this, Andy, being an ollie lifter, if he flips that flat side straight over onto himself and his hands are nicely straight underneath it, it's perfect to press. The other consideration is, because of the angle, and this is thicker, the way he had it was the bulkier, heavier side of the stone, and there is a difference, was back against him, not away from him. So when he goes to press it, it doesn't try to do this, it presses up overhead properly. These are just considerations you have to think about when you're doing a stone. And if you're going to go for a press, you want to consider, where is that stone going to end up on my chest, not where is it situated on the ground. Remember, as you lift the stone, it will often flip over. So you've got to think in reverse or opposite sometimes and go, okay, so if that side is facing away from me here, it will probably end up on top of me here. And if that's what you're after, that's the way you lift it.
You guys watched the last video we made a while back. We talked about where you find different types of stones.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
And, you know, stones near water tend to be a little bit rounder, a little bit nicer to lift, would you say?
Yeah, I suppose.
Not nicer to lift, maybe...
Different to lift. So, because somebody might argue something with handholds and nice sharp edges is actually easier to lift or nicer to lift because you can hold on to your hand. Now, if you're going to go ahead and hug the thing with your forearms and your elbows, and it's probably not going to feel that lovely because it's going to slice you to pieces. But if you're looking at your rounder stones, you tend to hug them more and squeeze them against yourself. So yeah, they are nicer in that regard. But lifting a round stone poses its own issues because grip is a nightmare. So The stone to Andy's right, the large one, that's the lifting stone that I've had down here in Green Gully for a few weeks now. Andy will have an attempt on that, but I want him to be the first to take a spin on this next stone. I've not lifted this.
I suppose it's important to note that if you're going to do natural stones, you're going to get dirty.
100%, you're probably going to cut yourself. These are nice and smooth, so these will add a new dimension to the difficulty, but they are a bit wet because we're in a flooded creek. This is the first time this stone's been lifted. Let's see if Andy can unlock it.
Just finding like handholds is difficult, eh?
Yeah.
Especially really
That's it. This is where the weight distribution really becomes difficult because there are no handholds on these stones. Even with a flat edge, it's not much of a help. There we go. Yeah, there you are. That's great. Right there. Oh, he's got the overhead option.
Why do I'm obsessed with putting stones overhead,
You're
and
an
I
Olympic
like
lifter.
put nothing overhead so far. So I make it look like I fail every time. But Luke was like, "This would be the perfect shoulder stone."
Which you did initially.
Yeah. And then I got cocky as usual.
Well, it's like, if you want to break it down, we can say there's like 5 stages of stone lifting, and overhead is like the ultimate 5th stage. It's not really a traditional method, but excuse me, it's sort of like the modern spin has become to press these stones overhead. So being an ollie lifter, I'm not surprised you want to press them all overhead.
That was actually fun to figure out. Like, I'd cup one side,
Yep.
and then get the other side.
That's it. If people look back at the vision of that, there was nothing uniform about the way you did that. In contrast to the way we would typically do an atlas stone, yeah, everything's the same because they're perfectly round. The weight distributions are the same. That's it. Whereas this time round, the weight distribution is not the same, even though there is a roundness to that stone. Like you said, a hand is cupped under one side, you might have a closed fist using your forearm on the other side, and these types of things to muscle it up. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, pause for a second.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important to note, and this is just my observation, is that compared to something like an atlas stone or a log where we kind of have, or even a weightlifting movement like a barbell or clean and jerk, there's sort of like kind of hard and fast ways of doing it.
Yeah.
And with stones, depending on your strength level, depending on your anthropometrics, depending on what the stone looks like, the lift might change, or your thought process on the puzzling or unpuzzling of it is changing. You've, like, straight away, I just left the stone how it was to lift, and you flipped it over.
Well, I'm sitting here going, am I going to press this or am I going to shoulder this? What's going to be harder off the ground? Obviously pulling under the flat side is going to be easier off the ground, but is that ideally what I want on the chest when I press it? I'm thinking maybe yes, because like I described earlier, I want to maybe have the rounder part sitting it up a bit higher for me to get my hands under. So if I can clamp that, which is kind of how you have to do the Dalwhinnie stone, clamp it from the ends and press it overhead, I'd probably want it like this so that it does flip over like that. But someone like yourself may prefer, if they were going to press it, to have the flat side on their chest. So you might start it the other way around with the round side facing down so your hands come under, more typically like an atlas stone, and go from there. But yeah, I was wondering if you were paying attention to what was happening there. I'm like, how am I going to approach the stone? That's how we do.
That was actually a very impressive one motion too.
Yeah, I was like,
You had it in the perfect place.
I don't want to dick around here. I just want to go straight up with it. Because it's not super heavy, but also the other reason I flipped that around then, just before I did it, there's that bulge there that sticks out more. If I got that bulge in my face, the stone's out here, I flipped around so the shallower side was against my face. Just another thought.
When you lift a stone or anything, if you don't know how much it weighs, it can catch you off guard.
Yeah.
You know, like I've lifted ornaments off like bookshelves or whatever and been like, oh fuck, like at first you can't lift it because you're mentally not
You're
prepared.
not prepped for it, that's right. You know what, it can actually work in the opposite though.
That's what I was just about to ask you
I
about.
wondered if that's where you're headed. Because when you go, oh, that's 80 kilos on the bar, for argument's sake, you know what that feels like, and you know that sometimes, maybe that had buried you at some point, right? So you've got a bit of a mental block there. Oh, fuck, I can't do that, or I might get it, or I might fail, or... When you don't know what it is, you just have to commit to that fucking lift. And I think it's the commitment thing. It's kind of what you're talking about with the whole, like, you pull the heavy thing off the shelf and it sort of catches you off guard because you haven't really committed to that lift. You've not respected it. When you lift something you don't know the weight of it, you tend to have a bit of a pull on it, but you're like, you've got to kind of mentally prep for it all.
And then,
so this stone here now that Andy's looking at is the actual green gully stone, as I've sort of coined the term. It's to be honest, it's a bit of a monster. It is actually quite a heavy, tough stone. And Andy's going to take a bit of time here just to consider it, basically, like have to think about handholds, potential handholds, and surface variations, weight distribution. You got to understand, he's standing in a muddy creek bank here. It's grassy, but there's a lot of soft ground there, so that's another consideration. What's his footing like? There is a flat side there on top. He can maybe flip that over and have a think about having his hands on that, but it's up to him.
I actually really enjoy this part of it.
Yeah.
The process. Just standing here thinking like...
This is the difference between Atlas stones and this. There's nothing to think about on Atlas stones. So like, put your tacky on or your chalk and just lift it because it's the same every damn time. Have a breather. I also like what you did before. You tried to come across it diagonally, and just thinking, hang on, there's a point here in this around here. Maybe I can get the weight distribution more evenly by going diagonally across the stone. Oh, that's wet.
So you would say that this stone is potentially around 150 kilos dry?
Yeah.
So it could be more than that now.
It could be
less.
more. I mean, a stone this dense probably doesn't take on a lot of water.
I just want to feel better about myself, you know?
Yeah, no, look, it's not a slouch of a stone. It is definitely a really challenging stone. It's probably the hardest stone I have in the mountains, actually. Oh, except one other river stone I have elsewhere, which I think weighs more. But
Is that the one you said defeated you near Butterblocks?
no, that's the one on top of Mount Hay. That's a whole other fucking animal. I don't even... See, that's blocked out of my memory because it's so traumatic. All right.
Come on, Luke.
Jesus. The mud under there.
It's so damp, right?
It's hectic, man. But my hands are actually sinking into the ground
mud,
under
yeah.
the stone.
At least it doesn't hurt because of that.
Yeah, except when it hits that.
Yeah.
All right.
Fuck yeah, come on.
Whew. Damn, boy.
That was good.
Yeah, it's a mean old stone. That's why it's a fitting challenge, but god damn, it makes you earn it. There you go.
what's hilarious is I'm exhausted and now I can't get my fingers out of it.
You're gonna have to just like excavate them.
Yeah, that is a tough lift. That's a goal.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if every stone you came out to, the fact that the first time I was here, I actually had to really work to even work that stone out. That's what a challenge stone should be. It should be you just waltz on up and smash it out every fucking time. Like you said just then with me, I had to kind of rework it. That's the third time I've been to this location. But each time it's been as difficult, you know what I mean? Which is what makes it a worthy stone.
So sometimes I see you lift a stone or a rock and you make it look super easy.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that, you know, like if you lift with training partners that are stronger than you, you will get stronger just by
by dint of the competitive sort of atmosphere it creates, yeah.
But the mindset shift as well, you know, like when we were lifting that like little, what you said was 80 kilos,
yeah,
potentially could have been 50 kilos, could potentially have been 100 kilos.
Yeah, 100%,
like,
yeah.
Who knows what your gauge of weight is compared to mine?
Way off, and it's like, yeah, everything's 100 kilos. Round up to the nearest 100.
But then I like approached it with the mentality, okay, this is 80 kilos. Luke lifted it quite easily.
Yeah.
I'll lift it easily. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so like, even just like shifting that mindset by having people around you or by seeing really cool feats, you can replicate.
Yeah, I think so, and I think you can. So, I think a good training partner in that regard sometimes can psychologically trick you into achieving the lift that you possibly might not have thought possible anyway. Like if I go, oh, that's 80 kilos. Well, you hit that, you approach that, I think, with a greater confidence than if I'd sat there and gone, oh, fuck, man, that feels like 180 kilos. Like, so I think you don't come in blasé, but you sort of go, oh, well, that's well within myself, and you approach it with that certain psychological confidence that may not have been there on a heavier suggested lift, you know what I mean?
Now on the other side,
yes.
What feels like 80 kilos to you may feel like 160 kilos to me. So we have to be careful when you train. Like, actually, you and me is the exact scenario where I have to be careful not to fall into the trap of...
Yeah, that's right, because we've got, you know, varying ability levels when it comes to that sort of thing.
Just like you and me when it comes to jumping.
I was going to say box jumps, like, it's the contrast. So you can
together we are the perfect athlete.
It's like, yeah, if we could combine our powers like Captain Planet, we'd be sweet.
Actually, no, you and Brian would make...
Me and Ryan would just be like the ultimate stone lifting lazy arsehole.
You just turn into a stone.
What are your thoughts? You want to have a dig at that?
Yeah, that seems a little bit lighter.
That mud, eh? See, man, use a handhold if it's available. There you go.
Oh no! Almost went into the water.
Fuck it, man. Go on, brother. Squeeze it in against that chest, man. Use that upper back. There you go. Oh, lovely.
So just to note, that isn't the same one I was lifting before. It's a slightly lighter one.
Still a good sized stone, actually.
Yeah.
And even though it's flat, it's nice off the ground, right? To your lap.
Yeah.
But then trying to do something with that to extend with it, it's like, hang on, now what do I do? I've got too many arms here. I've got too much arms, and I need my arms to actually be shorter because I can't, or longer because I can't quite hug around it. So you can do something different.
Yeah,
pull
it was almost like lever it so the corner sits on you.
Yeah.
And then
let it roll up over that.
Let it roll back.
Yeah. But how do you pull with your hands? Are they flat against it? Are they hooked around it? Like it's cool, man. It's actually not a bad looking stone.
You were just talking about it before, where there was a stone sticking into your neck, because I mentioned that, I don't know if you guys can see it, but I had
kind of necked himself a bit.
Yeah, with one of the stones that I took to the shoulder.
And what was interesting to me is there seems to be like no standards when it comes to natural stone lifting because it's in nature, who gives a fuck, but also there are some standards that, like, you know, when I got the stone to the shoulder, I had it under control, and you were like, take your hand away. Which seems like almost like a, you know, like a competitive style rule.
I think it's just there's no rules because we're in the middle of fucking nowhere, but I think sort of the accepted standard is that you just remove that second hand when you have it sort of under control to show you have it under control. It's more of a thing when you're doing the traditional historic stones and that kind of thing, but they are natural stones, so it sort of carries across, doesn't it? It's sort of like the 5 stages of stone lifts, if you like, are sort of break it off the ground, take it to the lap is the second one, third is extend with it, like stand up with it at your chest, fourth would be shoulder, and then 5 press it overhead. And sort of like we alluded to earlier, and James has mentioned on the Old Man of the Stones website, that typically overhead pressing a stone is not really a historic feat. It was never really the aim of most of the stones. It was more you had to lift it to, say, chest or waist height and load it onto a fence or some other thing, or a plinth maybe. But you know, as actual sort of strength athletes have approached these things, and I've done quite a few of the Scottish stones myself, overhead pressing, and I've pressed quite a few of them overhead. It just seems the logical step is the next ultimate challenge, you know, because if we sort of master these stones to the other sort of style lifts, like to your shoulder is usually one that most people would try to aspire to, and then if you can, you'd probably go for the overhead. So yeah, and being strength athletes, even yourself, you were saying earlier that pressing the stone overhead is like your natural go-to. It's like, because cleaning and pressing things is your forte, being an Olympic lifter.
Yeah, why just clean things? It's boring.
Exactly. But yeah, so I think it just adds another dimension to the challenge. There's no rules, of course, like I said, but when you take it to the shoulder, try and control it with your neck and your head and the other arm, and yeah, try and take that arm away just to show you have control over it. It's just you know, completes the lift, if you like.
Well, so, it's also the perfect pose for a photo.
Oh yeah, Insta loves it, so.
Unless you want wet shoes again. I've just done the dumbest thing and